So if you could state your name.
All right, my name is Eleanor Westerly, and my first name is spelled Eleonore, and my last name is spelled Wessere.
All right.
All right.
And consent for...
Yeah, I consent to be taped and for you to use this material in any way you need to use it.
All right. Awesome. So, I'm a Hecua student in environmental sustainability.
Okay.
And I'm here to document the events and learn more about the perspectives and what people here, these like-minded people, are thinking about climate change, and really get like a personal side of this.
Okay.
So, I guess to start out, like, let's see. She's in my group.
Oh, hello!
So Danielle, this is Eleanor.
Hey, Danielle. Nice to meet you.
Okay, let's see. So, yeah, tell me a little bit more about yourself. How are you involved with this movement? Yeah, and then if you could also repeat like the questions in your own way.
Okay.
That helps with the editing.
All right. Well, a little bit more about myself. I guess I come to this movement with having grown up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And when I say Milwaukee, Wisconsin, I mean Milwaukee, which is something that people often ask. And the urban ecosystem and the urban community had a real impact on me when I was growing up, and I always had a sensibility of the connection that I as an individual and that we as human beings have with the rest of the living world, that we sort of share together. And I grew up in a predominantly African American community, so I was exposed to a lot of issues around race and racism and kind of how that plays out with people. And obviously being a white person sort of in a majority of African American community, there were things that I learned early on about race and racism that I think maybe aren't learned in other kinds of ways. And so I've always had this connection between my environmentalism and with justice more broadly, and specifically racial justice, and as well as gender justice. And so I'm really here today because I'm volunteering with Minnesota 350. I'm the messaging coordinator, which kind of means that I'm working on the story that Minnesota 350 is trying to tell. And one of the first things that I talked with Julia about, who is kind of directing Minnesota 350, is she was saying, we're thinking about having our new tagline be one voice, one voice for climate action. And I said, hold on. There's actually many, many, many different voices that are all involved in this conversation and need to be involved in this conversation, and that aren't always involved in this conversation. So for our first step, when we talk about these issues, we really need to recognize that, climate change is this label that is kind of this big behemoth label that is global, but there is patchiness around the world. There is patchiness in our country. There's patchiness within the state and within our city, where the effects of climate change are going to be disproportionate on people that are actually contributing the least amount to climate change. And a lot of the voices that are part of that contributing the least are not actually represented in this diversity that we have right now. There's this huge swath of diversity in the participants here, lots and lots of different voices, lots and lots of different organizations, but even within that, there's a much, much bigger picture that we're kind of, we're part of the mosaic, right? And so I'm trying to sort of work within the environmental movement, and I hate the word environment for other reasons, and within Minnesota 350 to kind of really start to get us, to challenge us to think about, okay, not being so insular, and looking a bit more broadly to what is the diversity of voices that are out there that are not being involved in this conversation, and what are authentic, non-appropriative ways, appropriate, non-appropriative ways to involve those voices in the conversation.
Yeah.
That was long.
No. Excellent. Let's see. So yeah, you're focusing a lot on environmental justice then, and like the issues with people not people that are contributing the least are being affected the most. How do you think we can? How do you think is the? How can we involve these people more?
It's really, God. I mean, it's really even just hard to talk about and think about. I think one of the things is we need to first look at ourselves. And really get to know ourselves as individuals, ourselves as communities, ourselves as organization, and ourselves as a movement, whatever movement it is that we have subscribed to. Because I think often what happens is we look at an audience and we say, oh, so-and-so's not here, people of color aren't here, or which, there is actually representation here. But we look at who's not here and we think that it's somehow their fault for not being here. But there are priorities that other folks have that need to be respected, and there are levels of power that are either shared or not shared with other people that we need to be cognizant of. And so I think one of the things that's really important, like I said again, is to look back at ourselves and say, okay, what are we doing to make this either an inclusive or an exclusive space? And what are we doing that either makes us as individuals or communities or organizations really hold on to the power that we have or share the power that we have? And what are we doing that is either, complicit in this bigger system, this systemic sort of, Van Jones says the wasting people and wasting resources economy. What are we doing that is either propping this up, either the way we talk about, our issues, the way we talk about the world. How are we propping up the system that has brought us to this place of global, local inequities and global, local issues with our ecological life support system? What are we doing that's either complicit in that system that brought us to this space, or actually fighting that system that has brought us to this place and trying to create something new and better?
Mm-hmm. How much of the solution do you see as being promoted through community events, and how much do you think needs to be more politically based? What type of action do we need most?
It's really, I think that question of what type of action do we need most is a really kind of tense and maybe difficult one to answer. And when I say tense, I mean that in the sense of tensions. There are different points of balance and overlap and intersection in all kinds of different issues. And I think Al Gore said that when you think about climate change, and this is really the way we think about many problems, there's really no such thing as a silver bullet, right? It has to be silver buckshot. There's lots of different little things that kind of have to come together. There's some levers right now that I think are being pressed harder than they need to be, with the sense, given that those levers aren't producing solutions. I think that we need to have a really strong synthesis of community-oriented solutions and sort of policy legislative solutions. But the way things are going right now, it's like we as a movement, or we as Greens or environmentalists or whoever's in this sphere that I'm mentioning, have been trying to achieve political wins by looking more and more like the people that disagree with us. Instead of talking climate change, we're talking energy independence, which energy independence, that's a great thing and that's a necessary thing, but that is playing into this language of being afraid of the brown people that are across the ocean, right? And so through us talking about it in this way, we're sort of helping to prop up the system that got us to these problems in the first place. So it's not that I don't want political action. Like I said, I think that it's really crucial to have a combination of community and political action. It's just that the voices of the community really need to feed what and how that political action gets achieved. It has to be something that's cross-pollinating. And if there are voices from the community that are saying, actually, we don't want you to talk about it this way. Actually, maybe the way that you're putting cap and trade out there with business isn't such a good idea, then that needs to be listened to. Because if we're just doing things at the top without really listening to the people that are at the grassroots level, then that's totally not sustainable. You don't have a foundation. Those policies are going to collapse, which is what I think we saw in the past couple of years with all of this climate legislation that was trying to be pushed through, but didn't have a lot of grassroots support. But at the same time, we can't isolate ourselves in our grassroots communities, just sort of doing our own transition town projects or growing our own local food just all by ourselves, because we are nested in this bigger system that is a state level system, a federal level system, and so we need to take our own actions and sort of push those up. So, I mean, the answer to your question of what kind of action do we need most right now, I think we need more than ever this recognition of this conduit that needs to happen between the community and the policy activism, and that this is a cycle that goes back and forth and not something that is only isolated at the grassroots level or only isolated up here at the policy level. And even, maybe switching around that conception of what's down and what's up, like really setting those next to each other in equal importance and just showing that interplay and how that's important to fixing the issues that are at hand. So, you guys are going to have fun editing this.
Oh.
You did a very good job answering the question.
How about what gives you hope in the movements?
Hope. There is an essay you should read by Derek Jensen called Beyond Hope. And it talks about how, Julia will hate me for saying this, but it talks about how hope is actually something that kind of gets in the way of action. That if you think about, your own personal life, if your, faucet starts leaking, you don't say, oh, I hope that faucet will stop leaking. You might, but after a while, if it doesn't stop leaking, you actually have to do something about it. And I think there's a big difference, and I think hope in the kind of broad national policy level has come about with Obama, right? Who really used hope as a way to get himself elected, and everybody was sort of like, oh man, yeah, I've got so much hope in Obama. I really hope Obama will do this. I hope Obama will do that. But then that didn't translate into action from the grassroots, holding Obama accountable, and actually translating the hope that he gave all of us into real solutions that we were actually looking for. And so when I think of hope, I think less about what gives me hope, and more what gives me energy. What gives me energy to actually take action? What keeps me feeling like we can still take action? And I know that that's probably the way that most people use the word hope, like hope is sort of what keeps people fueled and what keeps people feeling positive. But I just have encountered it in so many ways in this kind of like, oh, I hope somebody does something way that I just, hope seems more of too much like a passive